My name is Val Free. I am the Executive Director of the Neighborhood Network Alliance. This is the Hey Neighbor podcast. Hey Neighbor is our punchline theme song. It's everything for the Neighborhood Network Alliance. We like to say hi to our neighbors by saying, hey neighbor. We acknowledge that we live in a neighborhood full of neighbors, not just the little girl down the street or the little boy around the street or the old man down the street. They're our neighbors. So we say, hey neighbor in South Shore. And today we have with us one of our neighbors, Tammy McCann, world-renowned singer. Hi, neighbor.
Hey, neighbor.
How are you?
I'm marvelous.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here, Val. This is amazing.
Thank you. Well, Tammy, just to give people a little background, Tammy is a singer who grew up in South Shore, lives in South Shore. Her nickname is Tammy from South Shore. That's how she introduces herself. So I would like for Tammy from South Shore to talk about Tammy from South Shore. Talk about your upbringing. How did you get into singing? Talk about your journey. Talk about South Shore, because we're going to get into the arts and culture of South Shore today.
Wow. South Shore has given me just everything. Everything that I am is because of South Shore. My parents moved here when I was, I think, 6. We used to live in South Commons, and we got our home on 7201 South Luella. And when I was about 6 years old, and I started my journey at St. Philip Neri Grammar School. And all of us, myself and my 2 sisters, went to school originally in South Shore and then blossomed to other neighborhoods for our becoming, if you will. But South Shore, to me, is just this perfect little hamlet when I was growing up. I mean, we had our own movie theater. We had Bubbles Candy store right on 73rd, right off of Luella. Yeah. We had so many wonderful little places to go, to play, to hang out, and everything that I am and everything that I expect of a neighborhood comes from, growing up here in South Shore, which is why it was really important to myself and my husband, who also grew up in South Shore, to come back and raise our family here. So I'm still a resident of South Shore on 80th and Paxton. And so, yeah, it's everything to me. For me, it's the Martha's Vineyard of the Midwest.
Yes, I would agree. We have some of the wealthiest Black people in the world who live here. Also, we have some of the poorest people in the world that live here. But we all work and live together, and we've been doing it for decades. Right?
Yeah, I think that diverse social, economic ecosystem really adds to what makes South Shore so special.
It is. But when we talk about arts and culture, let's talk about how South Shore came together and saved the Cultural Center and turned it into a jazz spot, which is your genre of music.
For me, the origination of the Chicago Jazz Festival came from the brilliant brain of Miss Geraldine DeHaas.
Yes.
She created the South Shore Jazz Festival. And when I say that this was something special, this wasn't a barbecue where you would just, come and bring a blanket. Yes. Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald. I think the last one that I saw as a youngster was with Diane Reeves. And so every spectrum of jazz was right there at South Shore Country Club. And the city of Chicago, as it will, was like, wow, what a great idea that is. And they absconded with it and took it downtown. And since then, there's been a lot of organizations that understand that vibrancy, that understand that location as being a perfect backdrop. Yes. For music, for entertainment, for culture. Yes. So I believe the Brain. South Shore Chamber of Commerce has done some events there, great festivals, music festivals there. So I'm sure there's going to be much more to come.
Oh, yeah. We would love to see our own Southside Ravinia type of prototype in South Shore. But just even around the cultural center where the community members spent 10 years fighting the city to convince them that it shouldn't be a basketball court. Blacks were not allowed to go in, almost couldn't even walk on that side of the street. And when they left it, they left the water on to destroy it and all of that. But it was Black people who said, we want to save it for something good. The mayor at that time wanted to turn it into a basketball court. Yeah, you didn't know that story?
No, I did not. I did not.
And they fought. It was called the South Shore Save the South Shore Country Club Coalition. And that's when Geraldine DeHaas came in and they did that. And the last jazz festival was in 2013. Yeah. So with that being said, knowing that history of South Shore, which is some deep cultural stuff. I mean, people came from all around the city of Chicago to save the cultural center. How does that feel knowing that you came from South Shore with that type of deep roots, that type of activism around jazz?
I mean, that's the thing that I think really poured into me. I mean, I was very blessed to have Miss DeHaas and her children as friends, and she as one of my earliest mentors. Wow. She did a tribute called Tribute to Marian Anderson and Mahalia Jackson. I think that's the first time that Mahalia Jackson was really, and her work was infused into me. Oh, wow. At the time, I was a classical vocalist, thanks to Dr. Lena McLean, who lived, as a matter of fact, on 69th and Oglesby, right, in that building on the corner. And Miss McLean really was a total influence on me. And from Miss McLean came to Miss DeHaas. And she would place me in this concert that she performed every year. And I just learned and grew as a performer and learned so much about what was expected of us as kids. I think that's one of the things that's missing, that, a lack of expectations for our babies within and without.
Yes.
Right? So from our homes to our neighborhoods, to our school systems, what those components that were in place when we were young are really sadly missing now.
Yes, they are. So while there are a lot of people who know Tammy McCann, and there are more that need to know Tammy McCann, how do we talk about how Tammy McCann get her name in every household? We want to make Tammy McCann, because Tammy McCann is from South Shore, a household name.
Oh, thank you so much, Val. I tell you, it's only by the grace of God that I have been blessed to be given from mentor to mentor to mentor. As I said, it started with Miss McLean, and my classical music exposed me to so many amazing languages. But then I fell in love with jazz. And so my parents weren't jazz people, so I didn't know who Ella was. I didn't know who Duke Ellington was. So it was something that I really, I had to come back home and seek out, where is this music that I heard? And I found it on the south side of Chicago with Vaughn and George Freeman at a little nightclub called Beige Man's. And from Vaughn and George Freeman, Ramsey Lewis took me under his wing. And from Ramsey Lewis, Henry Johnson. And on and on until Chicago gifted me to a worldwide audience. Wow. And with John Clayton and Branford Marsalis and Dee Dee Bridgewater, and now the honor to perform at Jazz at Lincoln Center under the helm of Wynton Marsalis, and doing a tribute to Mahalia Jackson at Jazz at Lincoln Center. Full circle, you know, and all of it came from the blossoming that started right here in South Shore.
You have a great story, you know that, don't you?
A blessed story.
And South Shore is blessed to have you, just like we have other singers and entertainers that have come out of South Shore. You were up for a possible Grammy this year.
I submitted my sixth record for one.
Okay. I like to say you was up for
See,
it.
I love that. See, that's the thing about our neighbors, right? You gotta elevate. We gotta elevate you at all times.
Right. We do high level stuff around here.
Thank you, Sugar. Well, I'm not the only one. There's so many amazing things happening musically in South Shore. There's the South Shore Opera Company, which is really fantastic. They do a lot of their performances at South Shore Country Club. One of my dearest friends and mentors, her name is Margaret Murphy. Yeah. She's the executive director of the South Side Jazz Coalition. Mm-hmm. Margaret and I started together, actually, with Vaughn and George Freeman at Beige Man's, at the Apartment Lounge, just all over the place. And so Margaret has become a force of nature on the South Side of Chicago. So many people love this neighborhood, understand the value of it, understand the history of the music. Jazz may have been born in New Orleans, but it grew up in Chicago.
Yes, it did.
And
it has a home in South Shore.
Absolutely. And we want to keep it that way.
Exactly. We want to keep it that way. I love this. I love that you are doing this thing, but have you ever thought about a South Shore collaboration with other entertainers, or who are the entertainers that you have collaborated with? Maybe not South Shore, but just Chicago. But I would love to see something come out of Bring It Home Chicago.
Oh, wow.
All the
what a great idea.
From Chicago
there
come
isn't
together.
Really one musician that I haven't had the opportunity to collaborate with. Here from D. Alexander to, as I said, Henry Johnson, Orbert Davis, Perez Whitted, Bobby Wilson. I mean, all of the great singers and instrumentalists that spring from Chicago. We all collaborate together. We all bump into each other around the world in New York City. It's a wonderful thing. And so when it's really something special to say, that you're from Chi-Town. Wherever I go in the world, it's a real moniker of pride. And I like to call it our marinade. The marinade of Chicago jazz is mixed with the Great Migration coming up from Mississippi and from New Orleans. So that blues and gospel, and to make it something that's special, it's crisp. It has a certain swing and a flavor to it that's unlike any place else. You can always separate Chicago jazz from LA jazz, from New York jazz. Everybody knows that sound. I didn't realize
that.
Yes, everybody knows that sound. And so when you come from here, there's a certain expectation, if you will, and all of the elements that can pour into you as a musician. It gives you the foundation to go and perform and show out at any stage. I mean, when I think the real spotlight of my career was becoming a Raylette with Ray Charles.
Wow. Talk about that.
That's really a funny story. I was on tour in Europe. I had a gospel group and a jazz group that I toured in Europe, in Italy, and Switzerland, and Germany. And I was on tour, and when I came home, I'd been doing that for several years. And when I came home, my sister says, "You have an audition." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I didn't set up an audition." She said, "Well, I heard on the radio they were doing a nationwide search for Raylettes." Oh. So I called and reserved a spot for you. And I was like, Allison, what are you talking about? She was like, I told the man, I said, you're going to pick my sister. And he laughed and he was like, yeah, that's nice, lady. She said, my sister's the best singer in Chicago. And I was like, you are crazy. So I look at the instructions. They say, be prepared to sing a cappella. Bring your headshot and your bio. Okay, fine. And anybody that's in music knows that the hardest thing you can do as a vocalist is sing a cappella. So, how do I show off my style? How do I show off my range? Not if you have
Miss McLean as a teacher.
Well, there's that. That's true. So I show up and there's a line of ladies. And at the time I was doing a temp job. So I came on my lunch break. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, you guys mind if I go first? I got to get back to work. And they were like, sure, no problem. I go in and they say, where's your music? And I was like, no, the instructions were, sing a cappella. And so the gentleman that was at the piano, mm-hmm. we were different generations, I might say. So he says, well, do you know any Aretha Franklin? And I said, no. I said, do you know any Anita Baker? And he was like, no. And so we went back and forth and back and forth. And so the head raylette was sitting, it's a big hall. And so she's sitting at the top of the, in the seats. And she says, well, do you know any gospel? And I was like, why, what's your favorite gospel song? I just came off the road doing a tribute to Mahalia Jackson. She said, oh, my mother's favorite song was Precious Lord. I said, E flat. And that was all she wrote. About 3 weeks later, I got the call. And another 3 weeks later, I was in Switzerland and I was a raylette for a couple of years. And it was the most amazing opportunity and experience of my life.
I bet it was. And you live where?
South Shore, South Side.
That is a story. That is a story. That is a story. Well, talk about how do you approach expressing your unique voice and style within the framework of jazz music, because you do have a unique verse. Is that last record, Do I Move You? Lord.
Oh. It's so funny you should mention that. That record was really the culmination. It's my 6th record. Mm-hmm. And it really was the culmination of me just kind of knowing myself for the first time, mm-hmm. and allowing myself to own my marinade. Yes, I had these influences of gospel music from the time I was a child from St. Paul Church of God in Christ. Mm-hmm. And yes, I had this exposure of classical music, where, the resonance in the bel canto school. And yes, I had this jazz, but I always kept them separate. I always thought, ne'er the twain shall meet, right? And what I realized during COVID was that who I am is all of those things. And all of those things can pour into each other and merge. Yeah. Thanks to a dear friend of mine, amazing bassist. Her name is Mimi Jones out of New York City. And so I decided I was going to take the origin story is that I decided I was going to take my jazz trio with me on my gospel tour to Europe. I'd always taken an organ and backup singers. But this time I said, well, let me take a rhythm section. And it just totally transformed the show and transformed the way that I looked at the music. And when I was talking to Mimi, who's an amazing bass player, when I was talking to her about coming on tour with me, I sent her the music, right, to learn. And she was like, this is really cool, but who's the chick singing? I was like, that's me. She was like, what? That is not you, Tammy. I said, yeah. And she was like,
to reintroduce myself.
Okay. And she was like, why don't you do that in your jazz? And I was like, oh, I could never do that. That's not, it doesn't go together. She was like, girl, you are crazy. And so during COVID, I really started thinking about that. It had already started to blossom a little bit, but the more I just really said it was okay It's okay to love on my red clay of Mississippi. It's okay to love on that blues. It's okay to love on Leontine Price and just open my mouth and see what comes out. And that's where Do I Move You came from. I wanted to move people, you know?
Talk about what happened on Spotify when you released it on Spotify.
Wow. It was just, my team, amazing people at Ovation Agency, they really taught me a lot about, digital media and tickety-tock and all these different spaces.
Yeah, because I see you
right?
on TikTok now.
And all these different spaces. And so they were like, Tammy, on Spotify, you are like trending like thousands and thousands of people. And I was like, what? I said,
First
I guess
day, right?
I better go get me a Spotify account. Then I had to go put it on my phone because I didn't know how to use that. So it's been a whole new world. It's been a completely new world. We got to the top 20 of the jazz charts on Sirius XM. It was just one blessing after another, one great opportunity after another. And 2023 was I think my best year as a performing artist. It is just after 20 years of doing this. It's just really great to really feel like people see you and value what you do.
Value what you do.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful thing, and you feel good about it.
Oh man, I feel so blessed.
What have been some of the most exciting places you have been? Because you're worldwide now.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember me?
I don't remember you. I love you. I love you to pieces. My music has enabled me to travel all over the world and sing for all kinds of people. Whether the crowd is 5 or 5,000, it's the same show.
Yeah.
And I've gone from Bangkok to Slovenia. I lived in Italy on and off for several years, and but I'd say my most exciting triumph was working with this amazing vocalist out of Greece named Mario Frangoulis. Mario is a concert tenor, so he's like the Barbra Streisand of Greece, right? So we've known each other for several years, but Mario sings, concert music. And he's like, oh, Tammy, I just love jazz. I want to do a jazz show. And so we would, over the years, we'd talk about it. He'd ask me for advice. I'd give him ideas. And he said, oh, Tammy, I got it. I finally got an opportunity for us to perform together. And it was supposed to kick off a world tour, actually. But of course, Mr. COVID had other ideas.
Yeah.
But he invited me to Greece, and I sang at the Acropolis on Herod's Atticus, and built in 1400 AD. And, when you just think about how many people that look like me have had the opportunity to stand on that stage.
Exactly.
And it was, over the years, you get these opportunities, and that thing about your knees knocking because you're nervous, that's a real thing. And throughout the years, that's come across me in so many ways. But at this largest stage that I'd ever been on in my life, I'd never been more certain. I'd never been more confident. And all I was doing was just waiting for them to call my name so I could show these folks what Chi-Town can do. That's all I wanted to do. And, praise God, I burned it to the ground. We had a good time.
To the ground. I loved it.
It was great. It was so great.
I bet it was. Something to see. So a lot of people know you. However, the world needs to know you. And we want you to be a household name. So talk to us about how we help Tammy make that a real thing. What Tammy is doing even right now to even do it herself, because I know your personality is big and bubbly, and it's nothing's too small. Nothing is small. Everything is big. So talk to me, Tammy.
Thank you, babe. I mean, I have this wonderful mentor, and his name is John Clayton. He's a world-renowned Grammy Award-winning bassist. And he said to me, Tammy, I was saying, I don't have any gigs. I don't have any jobs. I think I'm going to stop singing. And he was like, you can't think of it as gigs. You have to think of it as relationships. And he said, and not networking. That's not what I'm talking about. He said, that's so transactional. Yeah. He's like, build real relationships with people. And I never forgot that. And the relationship seeds that I planted years ago have all blossomed, and there's been a harvest. There's been a beautiful harvest in 2023. And people that, know me from something completely different have brought me to different stages, have brought me to different opportunities, have brought me to Princeton. Girl, I'm going to Princeton in February,
talk about that.
To sing and teach. I mean, Lord have mercy.
That is huge.
It's so huge. And I could have never thought that. But that's
how
because
did that
of a
happen?
seed.
Talk to us about how you end up being in Princeton.
It would be because
South Shore.
South Shore. It would be because of Dr. Trinice Robinson. I met Trinice Robinson, I think in 2014, at the Jazz Education Network. I'm so sorry, Trinice. I can't remember the name of your organization, but it's an organization that is dedicated to building diversity and bridges within jazz education and jazz organizations worldwide. Oh, nice. And so we've known each other and just, poured into each other and laughed with each other. And last January, I did my tribute to Mahalia Jackson, Yes, Mahalia, at the Gen Conference. And she was like, we've known each other, but she never really heard me sing. Mm-hmm. And then also to be doing the foundational work of jazz, right? So the foundation of jazz comes from gospel and the blues. And so she was like, Tammy, my students need to hear this. And so I was like, I knew that she was at Princeton. She's at Yale. She's at Berkeley. The sisters everywhere, right? And so I was like, well, yeah, that would be great. I thought, maybe we do a concert or something like that together. Because, I forgot to tell you, she could sing. And she called me and she said, listen, I want you to come. I do this every year and I bring people in to teach and to do a concert. And I was like, I was just flabbergasted at the opportunity, and that she would think of me. And she was like, no, sis, this is of course, of course I would think of you. Of course, yes. These kids can, gain from your knowledge and your experience. And so, from that to being at the summer jazz camp for Christian McBride. What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? Getting these phone calls, but all based off of experiences, relationships, connections, I
love it.
It's just, but I learned that sense of community, that sense of engagement right here in South Shore.
Yeah. Your story is not about to end. It's about to go to a whole nother phase right now.
It feels like it. I can feel the wind at my back.
2023 was just like a breath of fresh air. Now it's taking you to like a whole nother level. Are you ready?
I am so ready. I've never been more ready. And I think that's it's so funny that you asked that question. I'm like, I would tell my students, you need to be prayerful. You need to be positive. Yeah. And you need to be prepared for every opportunity that comes your way.
The 3 Ps.
There is right now, 3 blocks from here, there's somebody that sings like Aretha Franklin, rocking her baby to sleep. Yeah. 5 blocks from here, there's somebody that sings like Pavarotti, working on a car. Yeah. Don't get so caught up in your talent, you think you the baddest thing since sliced bread. Within a 5-block radius, anywhere in these United States, there's somebody that can sing rings around you. It's about being ready when that door opens. Yes. That's what it's about. So many people aren't. So many people aren't. So you have to be positive, Everything's going to go okay. Even when things go awry, it's okay. Let's get back on our feet and do it again. You got to be prayerful. I don't care what religion you are, what faith tradition you serve. You've got to have some inner foundation that keeps pushing you forward and propelling you forward. And you've got to be prepared. You've got to be ready to go. Because if you're ready to go, you don't have to get ready.
Yes.
You know?
So it sounds like you're ready.
I'm ready. Just like when they called me and said, you want to do this interview? I was like, oh, I got to get ready. I laid my clothes out. I did my hair. You know what I'm saying? This is what it's all about, being ready when that opportunity comes. Like this opportunity coming, you know, to allow me to be introduced to your million listeners.
Amen.
Amen.
We ready.
We ready. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you again. I really appreciate you coming out. Your story is gonna be another. It's gonna be another phase. We're gonna have you back talking about what you're doing. The summer is coming. You got to talk about what you're gonna do in Chicago, because you can't just not do anything in Chicago.
Well, you know, Val, I wouldn't have been anyplace else. I was so excited to get this call. I remember when this was just a twinkle in your eye, this idea, and to see it come to fruition is something really exciting. I mean, you know, you and the NNA are a jewel in South Shore. You're a jewel in the crown of South Shore. And so it can only get better. And our neighbors are going to be served as long as you're here.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Tammy. Thank you. Well, until next time.
Bye, neighbor.
Bye, neighbors.